Today I'm going to talk about a fraud, I consider a fraud that's rampant in the municipal bond market and municipal derivatives contracts like bond derivatives and interest rate swaps. Before you change the channel, this is probably one of the more important videos you'll ever watch from me. And it's exposing a fraud. I'm going to try and make it simple, and you should be blown away by this. So let's pick on a city. I'm going to choose Chicago. It really could be any town USA. Now, Chicago is in its own funding gap. So what it does is it sets up a private auction and it invites a few different banks to buy, let's say, a $100 million bond contract. This will provide the city of Chicago with $100 million, which they need for their infrastructure and just to waste money and argue and pay all their politicians. Whatever they do with it doesn't really matter. Now, our bank, A, wins this auction. They get a 2% fee, and they're promised, let's say for Chicago, it's a 6% annuity on top of that. So 6% they're going to pay on top of that $100 million. Now, Bank A receives $2 million up front, plus $6 million in annuities on the bond is $8 million. Now, the thing with that is that $8 million in payments and promissory notes then backs the bond. So this allows the bank to create the $100 million loan because they are receiving $8 million from the city of Chicago in promissory annuities and the 2% fee. The thing is that the bank isn't actually ponying up any money. They're allowed to create the money as long as they have collateral to do so, and the collateral is the money that the person who needs the money, the city of Chicago, is giving them. So you're literally creating $92 million out of thin air. There's nothing really to back it because the $8 million that the city of Chicago is giving the bank in the first place is money they have left over from another bond sale or another derivatives swap sale. What are these cities doing in the interest rate swaps market? Why are these banks allowed to sell them interest rate swaps, create credit default swaps, credit debt obligations on their debt? It is ridiculous. It is such a shaky house of cards. Now, this is how these cities get themselves billions and billions and billions of dollars in debt because there is no fiscal responsibility. They spend like crazy because the money's coming easy. And this is why the banks will always get shored up because they are lending the cities and the institutions of our country the money to survive. We are completely dependent on banks, private banks, to create money, more money than even the Federal Reserve does, to prop up our own cities. Furthermore, our Treasury Department and our government is running a deficit to prop up these cities as well. We're completely broke. There's nothing there. It's all created. Do you ever wonder why the city closest to where you live has exploded in size in the past 30 years? It is all derivatives. It is municipal bond derivatives, credit default swaps, credit debt obligations, interest rate swaps, bond swaps, forex swaps, you name it. It allows cities and central banks and private banks to create as much money as they need to fund their own growth. And that is the mandate since 1981, and that isn't going to change. That is the mandate since the creation of long-term capital management, which basically invented the derivative. And it will not change. And it has gotten to the point that we require central banks to inject liquidity, especially as per my last video, when we talk about a decline in the derivatives market of $50 trillion through 5 U.S. banks. that means the taps are getting closed. And if the taps are closing, that means that cities aren't getting their money. Corporations aren't getting their money because they need derivatives to survive as much as anybody else. And when the derivatives market contracts, we enter into a problem. I've always said if you want to look at where the problems are going to lie in our economy, look no further than the derivatives market. Because the derivatives market is so highly leveraged that any hiccup within the derivatives market has huge implications within our economy, within the global economy. It's actually pretty scary business. Now, the municipal derivatives market has gone up by 40% this year. $400 billion over the course of 2015 is projected in derivatives municipal bond sales. Now, what if the banks get in trouble and these bonds and the financial derivatives associated with these bonds and the swaps contracts and the credit debt obligations that these cities own, the private banks, don't get paid? Effectively, you get a Detroit where the city declares bankruptcy, and now all of a sudden you have your banks crying foul. Well, they do what Bank of America did, and they dumped their $75 trillion in derivatives that they've loaned out to everyone and that they've gotten involved in, and they're so heavily leveraged that they're too big to fail. $75 trillion, more than all of world GDP. Somehow Bank of America was allowed to create that over the last 30 years while the regulators were sleeping at the switch. And now that it's such a huge dark cloud over our entire economy and such a danger, they drop it into an FDIC account, federally insured, so taxpayers and the Treasury and the central bank, the Federal Reserve, are on the hook if Bank of America screws up. And you know what? If things really, really get bad, you do what Deutsche Bank did, which is something that I said was going to get done, and you just start laying people off. 23,000 jobs. Sorry, derivatives market is contracting. Until we get our central bank liquidity injections, this is sort of our message to the central banks of the world. Give us another QE, prop up the derivatives market, or we're cutting jobs. Deutsche Bank did 23,000. This is because they are projecting lower revenues, and those lower revenues are not coming from a collapsing derivatives market. In good times, when the swaps contracts are exploding and everyone is demanding debt, everything is good. Higher, higher, higher. Economy is good. But when the demand for that debt goes down because central banks aren't buying derivatives debt right now, they're taking a hiatus in their mandate, this is what happens. And this is really a message to central banks saying, hey, look, we're in trouble. We're cutting jobs. Give us our damn money. And that's why you have a lot of these alternative media sites, the ones that know what they're talking about, not the dummies that go on about doomsday, that we're going to see QE4, QE5, QE10, James Rickards, Jim Rogers, Mark Faber. That's why they say it's going to go on forever, because it has to. It has to. You can't let the derivatives market collapse to nothing, because this whole world would be like Aleppo right now in Syria. And it is the central bank mandate to prop it up, to prevent a huge hyper-deflationary spiral. Anyway, if you find this stuff interesting, you find my opinions interesting, subscribe, click like, share this video, get the word out. Don't let these people who don't really know what they're talking about run the show here on YouTube. Let's get out some good information. Have a great night. Take care. Bye.